If you know Yu-Gi-Oh from media but never played the game, you might have known that Yu-Gi-Oh are identical with unnatural monsters and humanoids. What you might not know is, some Yu-Gi-Oh monsters are just straight up animals. Some are very vanilla, but some of them have some sort of creative twist to it, like these pastel colored animals, or animals with jobs. There are also prehistoric animals, I mean, dinosaur is its own type in Yu-Gi-Oh! Some are also vanilla. Some are, yeah, like this. But some Yu-Gi-Oh player might not know that one of the most beloved or maybe hated archetype is actually just animals. I'm gonna talk about the Paleozoic. I've heard a specific Yu-Gi tuber called them bacteria several times, but no, they are animals, real animals. So, what are they? Let's talk about the name of their archetype for that. I strongly prefer the OCG name for this. The Japanese OCG name is Bajestoma. For the Korean version, I cannot read Hangul, so I'm just gonna trust Google Translate for that.
버제스토마,
Okay, so the Korean name is also Bojestoma. That's actually the best name for them. I almost forgot that Paleozoic were originally Korean exclusive, so that makes sense. Anyway, that name is straight up a reference to what they are, the Burgess Shale fauna, named after where they are found, the Burgess Shale, located in Canada. This is a marine deposit, which means all of these animals are marine creatures, which is why all of them are water aqua in Yu-Gi-Oh! For the TCG name, basically it's just Paleozoic in different languages. Paleozoic is an era. You might be familiar with Mesozoic, that is the era when dinosaurs exist. Maybe you're familiar with the name Jurassic, that is the middle period of the Mesozoic era. So, Paleozoic is the era before the Mesozoic, spanning from around 540 million to 242 million years ago. The Burgess Shale fauna fossils are from the Cambrian, which is the first period of the Paleozoic era, specifically Middle Cambrian, around 510 to 505 million years ago. Burgess Shale is the first Cambrian fossil deposit to be found. It was discovered back in 1909. What's interesting about the Burgess Shale fauna is their uniqueness. Most of them don't have an extant animal representative, so it took a long time for us to even understand what they are. Some fossils had been analyzed and redescribed several times, even as recent as June 2024. That is just 2 or 3 weeks before this video is gonna be uploaded. Even so, some of them are really popular, being used in several popular media, including Yu-Gi-Oh of course. So, if you're looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh archetype, the trap cards are the abundant animals, well, most of them at least, while the extra deck monsters are the dominant predators of the ecosystem. I'm gonna talk about them one by one. Starting from the most abundant animal, Marrella. It's named after Dr. John Marr. We found a lot of Marrella specimens in Burgess Shale, reaching over 25,000 specimens. They are really small, only about 2.5 centimeters. Marrella is an arthropod, but nothing like the current existing arthropods. They are active swimmers, but most likely stay near the seafloor. So, at first glance, the first thing I would notice when looking at Yu-Gi-Oh! Marrella is these eyes. We never found any evidence of eyes in Marrella fossils. The second are these appendages. These swimming appendages is a kind to the one you can find in stomatopod, like the mantis shrimp. The thing is, we also don't have any evidence of these thick bristles on the tip of the swimming appendages in Marrella. Usually, the reconstruction of Marrella just shows swimming appendages with several orderly setae, not clumping at the tip like this, but it's still believable. The regular appendages, or usually called the endopods, are used to walk. In Yu-Gi-Oh! Marrella, these are concentrated below the head. It should be under each segment of their body, so should be here, and a lot more. I don't really mind the hook as the claw here, but what's annoying to look at for me is this singular hook as their tail right here. Marrella don't have this, but I get it that it's just a creative process of making them cool. But my take is, if they want to add sharp edges to make them look cool, just make their spine bladed. These 4 big structures on their head, because these structures are actually serrated in real life. So the Yu-Gi-Oh version of Marrella can use this spine as a blade. You know, like Haxorus from Pokemon. Oh, by the way, I do like the fact that they made these antennae clearly segmented though, because a lot of designers often disregard the fact that arthropods' antennae are most of the time segmented. If we're talking about the effect, then I think it's quite fitting that they are the one that helps the deck mechanic running without doing anything special. You know, because they are the most abundant animal there. So they are like very basic yet still a staple in Paleozoic decks. Next, Leanchoilia. Leanchoilia is named after the Leanchoil Station, which is a nearby station from the Burgess Shale. So, just a disclaimer, I actually don't know how to pronounce this word. Is it Leanchoil? Is it Leanchoil? I don't know. Let me know in the comment if you know. Anyway, to put it simply, just think of Leanchoilia as a fat white shrimp. No, seriously, that's the easy way to imagine them. They are relatively small, only 12 centimeters maximum. They are part of the Megacheira groups though, meaning great appendages. That refers to these appendages. These tentacle sting growing from their great appendages, usually called the flagella, is most likely sensory organs, so basically like a feelers. The claws in these appendages are most likely used to dig and maybe grab and bring prey to their mouth. So as usual, the Yugioh one is exaggerated. More spikes, more edge as always, but it's not really a big deal. Oh, by the way, what we are looking at here is their mouth part, and you could see that they are pointing their claw towards the camera, so maybe this is POV when you're about to be eaten by them? Who knows what the artist was thinking. Oh, one last thing. While the Marrella don't have eyes, Leanchoilia clearly have eyes. Meanwhile, the Yugioh Leanchoilia don't. I'm curious to why, but I don't think there is any answer, so whatever I guess. About the effect, they recycle banished card to the graveyard. Maybe this is because they dig the seafloor for food? It still fits a little bit, so yeah. Next, Eldonia. If you look at this card, you might think, what the heck is this? What am I even looking at? And that's completely understandable, because that's also my reaction when I'm looking at it. Eldonia is named after the Eldon train stop, same railway as the Leanchoil station. They are even bigger than the Leanchoilia, reaching up to 15 centimeters. The thing is, we don't really know what they are. We just know that they have coiled guts in the center and some kind of tentacle around the mouth that are probably used to feed. They are usually reconstructed as a disc-like animal that just floats around or stay on the seafloor. We don't even know whether they can move or not. And now, if you look at Yugioh Eldonia, we can indeed see the disc-like body here, but we are looking at it from the bottom front view. I got so many questions about this design though. The most jarring one is, what are these red things? Is this supposed to be weapons? Like a bunch of morning stars? I don't know. The effect also confuses me. Why do they buff attack and defense? But I guess the designer is also confused. So as with many other Yu-Gi-Oh cards, they just slap attack and defense modulation on it and call it a day. Coming up next, Olenoides. This is a trilobite. So, there is a trilobite genus called Olenus. Olenoides just means resembling Olenus. So yeah, they are around 9 centimeters. I don't have anything to say about them to be honest. They are just trilobites. Like an armored sea cockroach if you somehow never heard about trilobites. I'm not hating on trilobites, okay? I just don't find them interesting. If you like trilobites and you find them cool, then good for you. You don't need to care about my opinion, alright? Anyway, if we're talking about the Yu-Gi-Oh design, then this is a great example of over-designing creatures. It's overly exaggerated. I don't even know where to start. The spikes? The glowing eyes? The dorsal fins? The antenna that somehow looks like whip growing from the sides of their head? I mean, what can I say? Maybe the designer also think trilobites are too bland, so they add a lot of cool and edgy features to them. Now, if we're talking about the effect, it's one of the good main deck card. I think it's a staple in the Paleo deck, right? Just because there are not enough good ones. It's just that I couldn't find any connection between trilobites and destroying spell or traps. Trilobites are usually known for their resilience. If I'm the designer, I would make them be able to reset themselves as a trap or something like that. Or honestly, just put Leanchoilia as a vac on them. It's more fitting in my opinion. Anyway, let's move on. Next is Dinomischus. Its name came from the Greek word dinos, which means goblet, and mikos, which means stalk. Why? Because they look like a goblet with a stalk. Quite simple, really. These are really small, only about 2.8 centimeters max, and they are really rare. We don't exactly know what they are, but the 2019 publication placed them as one of the stem group of Ctenophora. So they are in between the Cnidaria and Ctenophora. To put it very simply, between jellyfish group and comb jellies group. Anyway, if you look at the Yugioh design, we are looking at their mouth basically, from the top of their calyx. We could see here that they have a lot of barbed tentacles, which is typical of Cnidaria, not to the extent though, of course. But we actually don't know whether they have flexible tentacles or not based on the fossils alone. No evidence of that, but if we look at 2019 publications that I mentioned before, which describe another genus, which is thought to be closely related to the Dinomischus, then yes, we could indeed see that they have flexible tentacles. But remember, this card was made in 2015. It's way before this publication. So I guess props to the designer for being creative yet still realistic to some extent. Anyway, talking about the effect, it's one of the best main deck cards. But it's also questionable. Why do they banish a face-up card? I guess the logic is they use the discarded card as bait and then they suck the lured prey and so they are banished? But still, it feels weird that an animal less than 3 centimeters can just banish some big monsters at will. No need to overthink it though, so let's just move on. Up next is Canadia, or Canadia. It literally means from Canada. You know, like Canadian, but without the N. So if you are Canadian and you are wondering what your ancestor from 505 million years ago looks like, then you're looking at it. Anyway, they are also small, only about 4.5 centimeters. They are straight up Polychaeta, the marine bristleworm, with a really thick setae or bristles. We actually have a living example for this kind of animal. For example, the Cloaia. I don't have much to say about the Yugioh design. It's just Canadia with some creative motif or coolness factor. Well, I assume the green ocelli are just patterns. If that's supposed to be eyes, then that would be way too dang. The tentacles are also a bit too long, but it's kinda fine since they could protrude and retract them. Now, for the effect, this is arguably the best main deck card, right? Maybe alongside Dinomischus. All I can say is, at least Canadia are active predators, so at least it's fitting for them to get a better effect. Still don't get how they book their opponent, but whatever. Next is Hallucigenia. It came from the Latin word hallucinatio, which is also the root for the word hallucination. Why? Because this animal is one of the weirdest fossils from Burgess Shale. It's like you're hallucinating. This is the fossil. It's small, only about 3 centimeters. When it's first discovered, paleontologists are confused. Which end is the head? Which is the way up? How do they walk? And so, they were reconstructed like this, with stilt-like legs, tentacle thingy on their dorsal, and this roundish head. In 1991, we found out that we mixed up the up and down, so we turned it upside down, spikes on top. So the spikes are not for walking, it's for defense, which makes a lot more sense, don't you think? In 1992, we found out that it's the other way around. The black smear that we thought was its head is actually nothing, just fluid. The head is this long thing. And after that, in 2015, we finally have a clear reconstruction, with long tentacles around the neck and evidence of eyes. Originally thought to be a creature straight out of your nightmares, finally found out to be a goofy creature. By the way, nowadays they are very popular. I'm not sure why, maybe because of their appearance in Attack on Titan. Anyway, they are members of the Lobopod, which are the closest relative to either the tardigrade or the velvet worm. We aren't sure about that yet. If you look at the Yugioh design, it's quite vicious, isn't it? Looks like something that will chase you and bite you. Also, look at the leg. Spike on the bottom, tentacles on the dorsal, roundish big head, and no eyes. This is the old reconstruction of Hallucigenia, the first one. And as usual, lots of spikes and edges for the coolness factor. Anyway, for the effect, I don't have any comments on this. At a glance, casual might think it's good, but it's actually nothing special when you think about it. Same as the animal. Okay, maybe I'm being too mean. Anyway, last of the main deck cards, Pikaia. It means from Pika. If you don't know what Pika is, it's these animals. Pikas can be found in Burgess Shale. Alive, I mean, not as fossils. Honestly, I don't think there's any reason to why anyone would name them that way. It sounds like they are just looking around and naming things based on what they see at the moment. But it is what it is, I guess. Pikaia is a chordata. So, if we're talking about surface level taxonomy, Pikaia is technically the most advanced animal out of all the Paleozoic cards. Pikaia is a close relative to the Cephalochordata, commonly known as the lancelet, so it's almost vertebrate, but not quite. Pikaia is also small, only about 5.5 centimeters. So, the old reconstruction have these appendages near their head. The Yugioh design makes them long tentacles. But, Pikaia is actually just reinterpreted. It was published in June 11, 2024, so just 2 weeks before I made this video. The appendages are actually gills, and it's facing upwards. They also should have tentacles in front of their head, which the Yugioh design is lacking. Instead, they gave it these cool eyes, which might be cool, but not natural. Oh, and these hairy fins, which is also not natural. Oh, and, as always, lots of spikes for coolness vector. Anyway, the effect is almost good. Ask any Yu-Gi-Oh player, and they will agree drawing 2 cards is good. The thing is, you have to discard specifically a Paleozoic card, which makes it very situational. So, just like the animal itself, almost good, but not quite there yet. Alright, now we enter the top predators as the Xe card. First is the Opabinia. The name means from Opabin, aka the Opabin Pass. Again, a nearby landmark. They are relatively small, only around 5 to 7 centimeters, maximum up to 10 centimeters, but they are a successful predator. What's iconic about them is their 5 eyes and their clawed nozzle with their long proboscis. This nozzle is not their mouth, by the way. They just use this like a hand to grab their prey and drag it to their mouth. Honestly, the Yu-Gi-Oh design is pretty accurate. 5 eyes, clawed nozzle, their upward 3 pairs of tail fans, and even their lateral lobes with gill structures. But of course, there are still some exaggerated features for coolness factors. Too much spikes as usual, these 2 weird appendages, and these sharp mouth parts. And if you're gonna be nitpicky, then the nozzle should be a pincer, not a sucker like this. But still, I think in terms of scientific accuracy, the design is up there together with Canadia. The effect revolves around hand. You can activate Paleozoic trap cards from hand and add 1 Paleozoic trap to the hand. It's also fitting because they kinda have this long hand that they can use to grab things from relatively far away. So all in all, I think it's a really good card in terms of concept. And now the other Xe card, Anomalocaris. I mean, this is just straight up the most famous creature from the Burgess Shale. Maybe from all Cambrian deposit even. There is Anomalocaris in Pokemon, in Digimon, even in Kamen Rider. The name came from the Greek word anomaios, which means unlike, and charis, which means crab or shrimp. So it basically means unlike other crabs and shrimps, an anomaly. The complete specimen is 25 centimeters, but fossil fragments suggest that they could even reach 100 centimeters. And yes, this is the apex predator of the Burgess Shale fauna. They have 2 eyes and 2 long grabbing appendages, almost 1/3 their whole length. Oh, and these grabbing appendages are equipped with short spines called endite, which are also equipped with auxiliary spines. Looking at the Yu-Gi-Oh design, it's quite confusing. It's also overdesigned like the Olenoides. Besides that, it's also drawn in the POV when Anomalocaris is about to eat you, just like the Leanchoilia, which makes it even harder to be understood. Anyway, as usual, too much spikes and sharp edges. They are missing a pair of tail fan, should be 3 pairs like the Opabinia. Also, the Yu-Gi-Oh design have this grimace. One of the iconic things about Anomalocaris is their roundish mouth parts. They completely disregard that in the Yu-Gi-Oh design. But I mean, I guess it's also drawn like this for coolness factor. For the effect, destroying target is obvious and fitting, since they are the apex predator. Excavating the top card of your deck is questionable though. Alright, last one, and also the newest addition to the Paleozoic roster, Cambroraster or Cambroraster. This is a newly described genus from the Bergeshale. I believe it's described in 2019, so it's fitting to be the new addition to the archetype. Its name means rakes from Cambrian, which is based on their unique feature that I'll show later. They are around 30 centimeters and they are successful predators. What's eye-catching about them is this big dorsal carapace shaped like a horseshoe. Fun fact, they are nicknamed the spaceship and their species name have multiple meanings. You can translate Cambroraster falcatus as rakes from Cambrian shaped like sickle. The falcatus epithet is also a reference to Millennium falcon, referring to their big and wide dorsal carapace. They are also a radiodont, like the Anomalocaris, so they have roundish mouthparts. But instead of long grabbing appendages, they have shorter frontal appendages equipped with hooked spines. It's too short for grabbing prey, so they use it to sweep the sediments. The Yugioh Cambroraster is relatively accurate, but still, too much spikes. They also modified the frontal appendages. Instead of having auxiliary spines, they are blades instead, so it's more like a sickle. Their tail tip is also inaccurate. Oh, and I just want to say, they made the mouthpart accurate here. Why couldn't they do the same to Anomalocaris? Anyway, the first part of the effect is quite fitting because they use their appendages to sweep the sediment. I have no comment about the second part. The third part might fit a little because they have a large carapace, so they can protect others. But at this point, it's just grasping at straws. Alright, that's all the current roster of Paleozoic Archetype. If you really like Paleozoic, like a certain world champion, maybe you're wondering, will there ever be another addition to the archetype? Well, I couldn't answer that of course. What I can say is, there are still many other animals from the Bergeshale. They haven't even used all of the famous animals from there yet. There is still Nectocaris, Amisquia, and Odontogryphus. These three are among the most famous animals from Bergeshale. There is also Otoia, Wiwaxia, Herpetogaster, and Banfia, which might look quite interesting. If we're looking for newly described animal, then there's Capinatator, described in 2017. These animals can be the main deck cards. If we want to add other big predators as extra deck monsters, then there is Herdia. For the relatively new genus, there is Titanocoris or Titanocoris, which was described and published in 2021. So yes, the potentials are there, it's just whether Konami decided to make them or not. Alright, that's about it. By the way, if you are new here, this is not my usual kind of video, but I will make more zoologist reviews videos from time to time. I usually make videos about animals, their traits, and concepts in zoology, so if you are interested in that, check out my channel and consider subscribing. That's all folks, enjoy your day.